Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the Confident Retirement Podcast brought to you by LPF Advisors. I'm your host, Kris Flammang, here as always. Joining me are my sidekicks and fellow resident advisors, Armando and Collin. Hey guys.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having us.
Yes, we're back. We're continuing our series for high earners, not rich yet, otherwise known as Henrys. And today we're looking at three popular ways to save for your child's future. We're going to go through 529 plans, custodial accounts, and brokerage accounts that are owned by the parents. Now, each of these has pros and cons and possibly different uses. We'll get into that a little bit. Understanding them can help you make better decisions about how you might use them. First, let me go through our disclaimer. The information we provide is our opinion, not necessarily that of the firm or the platform. We provide general information only on the podcast, not any customized investment advice. Nothing should be construed as financial, tax, or legal advice. You should consult with your own professionals about your personal situation. All right, so Armando, let's hop in.
Yeah, let's start with the first one, Collin. So what is a 529 plan and why do people use it?
Yeah, a 529 plan is a tax advantage investment account specifically used for educational expenses. So you put in after tax money, it grows tax deferred. And as long as the funds are used for qualified education expenses, the withdrawals are tax free as well. That includes college tuition, room and board, books, and even some K through 12 expenses.
Yeah, and I want to, well, one second, Armando. I also want to interject here. We won't jump into the weeds today, but with 529s, the definition of higher education expenses and what they can be used for is very broad. So things like trade schools, it could be used for that if someone wanted to become a chef. All those things, post-secondary higher education expenses, the 529 of all the plans we're going to talk about today is probably the broadest one in terms of defining higher education.
Yeah. I feel like the rules are always ever changing.
Yes.
Got to stay on your feet. And I know we both know, all three of us know how expensive education has gotten over the past decade. So what about custodial accounts like UPMAs or UGMAs, Collin?
Custodial accounts are, you set up for a minor and the money legally belongs to the child, but you as the custodian manage it until they reach the age of majority, usually between ages 18 or 21. Here in Florida, it can even go up to age 25, but you got to check on your state rules. Unlike 529s, the money can be used for anything, not just education.
When would someone prefer one of these accounts instead of over a 529?
You might consider a custodial account if you're not 100% sure the funds will go toward education. For example, maybe the child ends up not going to college, or you want them to have money available for a down payment, or maybe even to start a business. Custodial accounts offer more flexibility, but you lose those tax perks that I was talking about before.
And speaking about those tax perks, what are the tax differences between UPMA, UGMA, or 529 plan?
This is a big one. So when comparing the two, with the 529, the growth is federally tax-free if used for education. Some states also give you a tax deduction or a credit for those contributions. On the custodial accounts, however, those are taxable. The first 1,300 of annual income is usually tax-free, and then the next 1,300 will be taxed at the child's tax rate. Income above that will be taxed at the parent's tax rate, just due to the kiddie tax, which we don't have time to go over today, but we will, I'm sure, in other podcasts. But over time, those taxes can eat into your returns.
And for those pursuing, higher education, financial aid comes to mind. So what about financial aid?
Mhm.
Do either of these accounts hurt my case or your chances of when applying for financial aid?
Yeah, so they're treated differently. The 529 plans are owned by the parent and are considered a parental asset on the FAFSA form. So they reduce financial aid eligibility by about 5.5% or so of the account value. On the custodial account side, they're considered the student's asset, and that can reduce aid eligibility by up to 20% of the account value. So from a financial aid standpoint, the 529s are a lot more favorable when it comes to this comparison.
Okay. And what happens if, a college doesn't go, what happens if a child doesn't go to college? That's one of
Mhm.
these accounts are designed for. What do you do with the 529 money?
Yeah, this is a great question that we get all the time. So you have a few options. First, you can change the beneficiary to another family member. That includes siblings, cousins, or even yourself if you decide to go back to school. Second, as of 2024, you can roll over up to 35,000 of unused 529 funds into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary. So you have to assume that there's going to be certain conditions that need to be met for that to happen. And lastly, if you do a non-qualified withdrawal on the 529, the earnings are subject to income tax and a 10% penalty, but only on the earnings portion, not your original contributions.
And it's important to note there that on those Roth conversions, you cannot convert the whole 35,000 at once in 1 year. You have to do that over time up to the contribution limit for a Roth IRA. So we might do a different session on that, but you can't do the whole 35 grand at once.
Right.
Unfortunately, you can't. So when I put the money in these accounts, can you invest the funds in both types of these accounts however I want?
Not exactly. So with the 529 plans, you're limited to the investment choices provided by that plan, usually mutual fund portfolios based on risk level or age-based options. So it really provides some guardrails for you. On the custodial account side, they give you full control. You can invest in individual stocks, ETFs, crypto, whatever you want. That's both a benefit and a risk depending on how hands-on and savvy you are as an investor, because those guardrails go away and you need to make sure that you know what you're doing.
And what about using a regular brokerage account in the parent's name? How does that compare to those options we've talked about?
That's actually a great third option that gets overlooked very often. A parent-owned brokerage account offers total flexibility. You can invest it however you want and use the money for anything, not just education. There's no tax breaks like you get with the 529, but you also don't have the restrictions that come with the 529. You're taxed annually on dividends, interest, capital gains, but you avoid the issues like kiddie tax since it's your asset, not the child's. Along with that, it's also private. So the child never has legal claim to it, which is helpful if you want to maintain full control on how that money is used.
Good information there. What's the biggest mistake you see people make when they're choosing between a 529, an UGMA, or a brokerage account?
People often underestimate how limited the flexibility is in a 529 and overestimate how free custodial money is. Once your kid turns 18 or 21, that UGMA account is their money. They can spend it however they want, and you can't really stop them from doing that. Also, many families forget to factor in the taxes. That small difference in tax treatment can result in tens of thousands of dollars, over 18 years.
Okay. So there you have it. That was concise. We packed a lot of info in there. Both 529 plans and custodial accounts and accounts brokerage owned by the parents have their place. If your primary goal is college and looking for tax efficiency and financial aid friendliness, then the 529 plan is pretty hard to beat. But if you value flexibility and you want more control, even if that means less tax efficiency, a custodial or a brokerage account owned by the parent might work better. As always, it depends on your goals and your future. You should consult with your financial professional. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe and share it with a friend who's also in the Henry Club or has kids they're saving for. And if you have more questions about this or other financial topics, you can feel free to reach out to us at lpfadvisors.com, or you can send us an email, info@lpfadvisors.com. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. And then until then, take care and be well. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Kris.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Confident Retirement Podcast with Kris and Mark from LPF Advisors. For more information on them and retiring confidently, please visit lpfadvisors.com. If your ears are pleased and your mind is now at ease, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.